Paul Wells joining us live by phone after a very busy 24 hours plus in Scotland. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Where were you when the vote was going on? Were you sitting sort of in between the yes and the no? Tell us how it went down.
I just parked myself in my hotel room. I've covered a lot of elections, and if you're alone covering something, if you're not part of a huge team, you're just dumb to go to one of the campaign headquarters because you sit around waiting and not knowing what's going on anywhere else. So I let the BBC do my heavy lifting for me.
A nice call. It's kind of like watching a hockey game from a suite. It's a different experience,
Exactly.
For sure. What are the headlines like this morning?
There's a really strong sense of relief that this is over. I mean, you would be surprised walking through Edinburgh at how there is just a complete absence of acrimony. And the people I've asked directly are pleased that the decision is made, even a couple who were hoping that the yes would win. There's now a strong sense that some kind of change has to be demonstrated. You know, the Prime Minister of Britain, David Cameron, published a formal pledge to decentralize the United Kingdom, give Scotland more say over its own decisions, and now people are impatient to see whether he meant it and whether he's able to do it.
And Paul, when it comes to making these decisions, what truly was the deciding factor for Scotland to vote no, and can there be a harmonious relationship with future decisions in the United Kingdom?
I was struck by one overnight exit poll that showed that almost 3/4 of no voters decided more than a year ago how they were going to vote. They always knew they wanted to stay in Britain, and little of this campaign had much effect on them. But among the people who did decide based on the debate, a very large number were swayed by arguments that Scotland couldn't keep the pound, that you can't have sovereignty and a monetary union. And the guy who was making that argument was a Canadian, Mark Carney, who's the head of the Bank of England, was the former head of the Bank of Canada. And so his intervention seems to have been decisive.
The 85% voter turnout, what does that tell Canadian eligible voters as we're staring down a federal election in a year? It seems so remarkable that that many people were motivated to turn out and vote.
Well, I think it shows that if the subject at hand is important, people take it seriously. You know, so many of our elections are over a point of GST one way or the other, or you know, should you have a vote before you send fighters to Libya, or, you know, things that are very abstract for people. The question at hand here was, what kind of country do we want to live in? And just as in Quebec in 1995, the turnout was higher. If it's something that touches people in their everyday lives, they cannot wrap their heads around, they will come out for the debate, and people did in Scotland in droves.
Well, Paul, great insights for you. Again, that's Paul Wells on the phone from Scotland, political editor for Maclean's magazine. Thanks so much for joining us this morning, and an historic vote that just happened in terms of change for the United Kingdom.